Tuesday, December 1st meeting. Agenda review and disposition, any changes?
The only quick add I have is, it's called the DESA approval, capital DESSA. It's that social emotional screener that Neil was talking about last week.
And at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Christy, Vice Chair, who is going to facilitate the meeting tonight for some training and preparation and just an opportunity to see how it works and get comfortable with it.
All right.
To learn, basically, student. So, you just did the minutes? Did you just say something about the minutes? No, you did, okay.
You're at number 2.
Oh, so yeah, we don't have anybody on the floor here tonight. So number 3, approval of the minutes, and there's several minutes. Everybody had a chance to look through them already.
Yeah, sorry, I got caught up.
Thank you.
For some reason, I thought someone else was taking them, and I was supposed to be taking them, so I got non-public.
No, it's all right.
I don't know if you might want to ask anyone if there's any changes.
And yes, anybody see any changes, other than the one that Kyla already?
I just have a couple minor changes, just some spelling of people's names. We should probably, I saw Mary Boyle, I believe the last name's B-O-Y-L-E. And Pat Barron is B-A-R-O-N, I believe. Right? That was, I really just want to prove that I read that. That's fine.
Good job.
Yeah, and just, I have a change, September 1st, Kyla Welch, superintendent's, I don't know, was really, I don't know what happened there. Just, that's a typo. But I haven't seen anything else.
I'll make a motion to approve the slate of minutes with the grammatical spelling corrections for November 10th, September 1st, October 6th, and November 10th.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have any, no, we don't have any students here. Oh, sorry. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstained?
It wasn't a couple of them.
All right. Now we're good.
Very now,
Okay.
ready to go.
Now we can move on to the principal's reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we're a second day back in school. You know, we went remote before Thanksgiving. Kids were eager to get back. I'd like to commend the staff. Attendance has been great. Student attendance been staying fluctuating between 50 and 70 kids. And I have the present numbers are holding firm as we speak today. We still have 541 students that are in person. And we still have approximately 93 students that are doing remote, and that does fluctuate every day. You know, some people will choose the VLAX, other people will say they're coming back in, and we're working with families as we put that together, make that use. Ended a very, 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 very successful fall sports season, as you know. Unfortunately, we did not win the football championship, but kudos to Souhegan. They provided a wonderful venue, and all the protocols were followed. Sportsmanship was great. Superintendent was there, principal was there, athletic director was there. Kudos on both teams. Our kids played a great game. And we had a great fall season. And you figure out just what we had to deal with as we move in. Kyla will talk more about the winter season as we approach that. And there'll be some recommendations forthcoming from the NHIA. I have a major meeting on Friday, and we'll keep everyone informed there. But we look like we're going to be in good shape for the winter season too. Kids are excited. All our clubs are up and working. There are a couple of changes because going remote. Theater practices were canceled. I'd work with Kyle, some days we'd close the building and, we're cleaning, and then I could have the kids in the next or whatever. But we're gonna move that performance probably around till January. I will keep you updated on it. I didn't wanna put them a deadline for the kids, but they work every night from 4 to 7 and play parade. They practice all the social distancing and wearing the mask, so they're doing a great job there. We are going to do a performance from the music department. I wanted to update the school board on. The band and choral ensembles are presenting a recorded performance to be made available to students, families, and the school community. The recording will take place on December 16th or the next day that's in person. If we're in remote, obviously we're going to go the next day, with students following social distance protocols in the auditorium. Both groups have worked extremely hard and are excited to be able to present something for people to view at home. So we're excited about that, and we're trying to keep a normal schedule the best we can. I don't know if I missed anything else. We are into quarter 2, and I have these team leaders are working. They have a work schedule on Wednesday and Thursday. They're going through the team leaders who took us through the NEASC and are working on PLCs. That group is continually working. They'll work. I have a workshop for them on Wednesday and Thursday, and I've provided coverage for their rooms so they can make amends for that. Unless there's any questions for me, that's the principal's report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so committee progress report. So we'll hear first from the Teaching and Learning Committee.
Yes, Tennille Torino came to our last committee meeting to request a couple things. To change the position of social work position to a student assistance coordinator, which is a more in-depth
Student wellness coordinator, yeah.
wellness.
Yeah.
Okay.
But pretty much the same, yeah.
Okay. A position that encompasses more than social work, or how does that?
Yeah, it covers more. You're familiar with student assistance counselor too. It's more drug and alcohol intervention, systems-wide intervention, dealing with some of the disciplinary issues more on the social end of things, and would work directly with Tennille, which Mike does that now as the social worker, but it just broadens the position, and we can look for a variety of folks with different certifications other than social work. So, but they would still have to have a credentialed certificate from the Department of Ed.
We voted to pass that along to the full board, so we'll be looking at that tonight. And also to introduce us to the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment that they will be using next year, a standardized strength-based measure of social and emotional competencies. So Tennille went through that with us as well, and after hearing her presentation, we moved that onto the full board as well.
Yep.
We had a preliminary budget discussion. The superintendent handed out a first draft of the budget for us to peruse and for future discussion. And we had no non-public session.
Questions? Thank you. So next is, I don't need to move anything right now.
Right,
that's great.
Okay. School Operations Committee.
So we met the same evening, about 5 minutes later. We did agree as the subcommittee to not make any changes to our pesticide conversation, as what we're doing adheres to the state safety standards, so we were just moving that forward. We did receive draft 1 of the budget as well. We shredded it in our section, and we are going to be reviewing that tonight. Our next committee meeting will be January 19th. As long as we get through to 2021.
That's right.
Questions? All right, there's no SCC. So moving on to discussion items. COVID update.
I just have a few updates on this front. At this point, we have one active case at the high school. We are closing out on our 2 other cases, close contacts, as those kids are back on the 3rd. So we did have a positive case that we were informed about yesterday. So we had only 3 student contacts from that case. We originally thought there were none, but there's social gatherings over the weekends that we're unaware of sometimes, and there's other contacts. So we're just trying to discourage some of that because there seems to be some bigger gatherings happening. So that's not something we can control, but it's just something that if we're going to stay open, that's what we need to do. So that's kind of been the message. What we are happy about in all of our cases is that they're sporadic, and which means our mitigation strategies are working. The kids are spaced apart. There has not been any student-to-student spread in any of the cases. So that has been super helpful and has helped us remain open. The only other piece I have for tonight is that we continue to move forward with all winter sports per the NHIAA guidelines. There is still some of the mitigation strategies being put in place by NHIAA and Division II athletic directors. We're trying to have full schedules for the kids, so in order to do that, we'd like to agree to move forward with wearing masks during basketball, and that is during play, and that was among the Division II athletic directors. There will be additional guidelines for the more at-risk sports, such as hockey and wrestling. So most of our sports have started, they're starting more of a fitness and skills right now. Skills and drills, so they're distance, they're in smaller groups. It's more to just get them still moving with something. And then once practices start on December 14th. And then the first competitions don't start until after the new year on the 11th. January 11th. So we're going to get moving, and I think the approach that we have given all of you has worked. Let's move ahead as scheduled. If we have to pull back a little bit and switch gears for a temporary amount of time, we will do so. I think we will limit fans for indoor events. But what that looks like, I just think we have to wait till things may look very different in January than they do now. So we're just taking it a week at a time, but we'd like to move forward with all of the co-curriculars and with the sports like we recommended over the summer. I just didn't know if anybody had any questions about
I can piggyback just quickly on what, it's a user-friendly schedule too. If you notice, December 14th, there will be no games like during the holiday vacation, and the season ends earlier too. So the kids don't run into that February vacation too. So that was widely discussed when the NHIA put that in. So, and then as Kyla said, there'll be other mitigation strategies coming from the Sports Medicine Committee on the NHIA. They're meeting on Thursday. So they will come up with their recommendations, as Kyla was talking about the masks, like in all games on that piece. But it's a user-friendly schedule, and she'll be doing nominations in non-public for the coaches' winter sports.
So the only other piece is, that's come up a few times that I've had some emails from parents or whatnot, is, when do you close the school? When do you go to remote for a long period of time? Right, they thought if there's substantial spread in the community, you automatically go to remote. So that is not the case. We do look at all of those numbers, but really after working, we've come a long way even since August as far as working with the state epidemiologist, Dr. Chan has said, just look at your school data. If you have 2 cases or 1 case, then you're fine to keep going. If you have 3 cases and they're connected to each other, maybe you shut down a classroom more towards the the K through 8. And if there's an outbreak, then you've got to rein it in a little tighter. So really look at the numbers in your building. So that's what we're doing. That's why we have not gone to, some schools have gone remote after the holidays. We purposely did not do that. So I just wanted to remind you that's the reason, to keep them in as long as we can. And even before before Thanksgiving, we had to pop in and out a few times, which is frustrating and unpredictable, but it's better to see our kids even once or twice a week than not at all. So I think we've been on the same page with that piece and trying to keep them in. So I just wanted to make sure you're all aware of that's how we're kind of determining the numbers. Department of Health is overloaded. We are doing most of the contact tracing. We actually are doing the contact tracing from our office and from the building. So we are, which we know the kids, and the kids are they've been great about telling us who they've been around, what they've been doing, and really helping us out with who's been in contact. Parents have been excellent when we need to call them too, because it's not great to get a phone call to say, hey, you're out for 14 days. So we're lucky to have testing here, so kids can get back into the building pretty quickly. We have rapid testing available at Spear and at Midstate, so kids that have symptoms, then they can go get tested pretty quickly, and if it's a cold or if their test is negative, they can come back once the symptoms improve. So we are lucky to have that, because there's many places that don't. That's all I have on the COVID front. I'm sure it will change in a few weeks, but that's where we're at for right now.
All right, questions?
I have a question. Well, two things, Kyla. I'm hearing a lot of positive feedback about how we're handling it. So everything you just said, I'm getting phone calls and people are reaching out to me. I actually got a couple of emails, so thank you for not shutting everything down, and really being systematic and keeping kids engaged, so I think that's great. The other piece is, I've been asked about wrestling, more hands-on. Is there a different approach? Will they just be practice? What's the...
So wrestling is going to go as planned. It's a little riskier. It's parent choice for them to play. It's for short amounts of time from what our understanding is.
As Kyla stated before, the mitigation strategies are being worked out as we speak.
They haven't
and we're
done
going to bring them back to you,
Yeah.
so you can see exactly. They're working in the right direction. And there's only a couple of schools that I've heard of that are not going to offer it. But we will bring those back to you as we work them out. And they're going to be pretty strict.
Yeah. And then we're, with hockey too, we do have an arena to play at, so Waterville Valley is going to let us use their arena, so we are able to have a hockey season. And those already have strict mitigation strategies for the state, so they have to wear masks and do all kinds of things for their people.
Same thing in practice,
Yep.
too.
Yep.
Any other questions or? Trying to make a motion? Ask for a motion yet? Okay. All right, so moving on to student wellness coordinator. We already kind of talked a little bit more.
Yeah, so I would just ask if the board is okay approving both the student wellness coordinator and the DESA, which is the social emotional competencies that we'd like to implement for next year. It would be two separate motions.
So I'll make a motion to approve the student wellness coordinator.
Second?
Right. And for the social emotional, sorry. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Abstain? Thank you. All right. Now for the social emotional competency. Well, anyone make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. All right. Now, the budget draft 1.
All right, so I passed out, it's going to say draft 2 at the top. I passed around draft 1 the last time I made a minor change to that budget. So I'm going to go through all of it, not line by line, but I will highlight the major ups and downs and the explanations for some of the areas. If you have a question, just stop me in my tracks, or feel free to ask Dan, Bruce, or I any questions as we move through it, okay? All right, so on page 1, which is the 1100 account, which is all of your regular ed, Line 2, you'll see, is up $104,203. So that is reflective of, you had 2 English retirements last year. There was one that you put in the budget to replace. We did replace with 2. So that is reflective in that, as well as any track changes. So those are the 2, that is the reason for the increase in that line. Jumping down to line number 6, you'll see is teacher retirement. That is all the way to the right. You'll see that it's up $109,382. We had talked about this in 2 previous meetings about the retirement going from 17.8% to 21.02%. Overall in the budget, this is an increase of $198,000 between all the salary lines, both support staff and regular and other faculty. So that is a significant increase for you in this budget. You'll see all the way to the right too is the default budget, so we're presenting both at the same time for the public.
Kyla, can I interrupt?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Could you go back to the salaries line 2 again? So you said there were 2 English retirements and then we put 2...
You put 1 in, but we replaced, but you decided to replace 2 based on the numbers of enrollment.
Right, okay.
So an additional position is in there from last year.
From this past year. So this is a new position, that not a
We had to replace the position.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right. But that person is not here now, or that's not a...
Yes, it's here now.
Versus this current year.
Yep.
I'm confused about the difference, if this is next year's budget.
So it was only 1 was in your proposed budget for last year.
Okay.
So this year, even though you're over budgeted this year,
Okay.
so it's just now budgeted for next
All right,
year.
got it.
If that makes
Thank
sense.
you. Okay. And then you said something else about...
And track changes, so anybody that's moved over on the columns are up because they've had another degree or credits per their
Okay.
contract.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Jumping down to line 12, purchase services, you'll see is up $15,000. And that is mainly due to the copiers.
Copies and also the ESL services we provide.
Yep, all right. There's nothing else on page 1 to review that's pretty much the same. Nothing else on page 2. Yep,
Question on line 12.
12, yep.
The ESL services, could you explain those a little bit more?
English as a second language, so that would be for a person to come in and provide intervention for the English language learners.
So it's for our students?
It's for our students, yes. Yep, for English as a second language, yep. They provide testing and intervention. Jumping to page 3, again, there's no major changes on that page. Page 4, I'd like to bring your attention down to line 143, and that is up a little bit just per this collective bargaining agreement. That includes both, it's going to be the new position, assistant to the principal, which is now the safety coordinator, and Crystal Francis in the learning center.
Jesse and Jesse. Yep.
It includes the bump in retirement as well. So you'll kind of see the retirement scattered throughout the budget as we move through. Page 5 is mostly special ed, and I'll just take you down through this. We have salaries of 6.6 full-time equivalencies. That's due to IEPs. Jumping down to the teacher retirement, line 162, you'll see that bump is up. I want to bring your attention down to purchase services, which is line 167. So that is down $51,152, and that is basically any behavioral specialists, anybody that we contract out with for significant disabilities and connected to their IEPs. So you'll see that's down quite a bit. We'll also jump down to another big number, which is line 172, which is your out-of-district tuition. And that is down $15,000 and it's at $765,000. So that's any student placed in any hospital setting, any behavioral residency, and any foster care placements that we may be responsible with students with IEPs. So we try to educate them as much in the building as possible. Sometimes we don't have control of that situation. So that is all directly related to IEPs. Any questions on those? Those are two pretty substantial numbers that...
Because it can change so quickly with one student moving into district, do we have any contingency funding for that whole area of special ed, whatever it might be?
Yes.
So what you do have available is you retained the fund balance for the prior year for the last couple of years, and that would be one of the acceptable prescribed uses if you chose. What your retained fund balance from last year, which we talked about towards the end of this discussion as well, is $292,724. So if something were to come up this year, you could, by simply holding a short public hearing before one of your regularly scheduled board meetings, access that $292,000 for any unanticipated special ed costs.
Don't we always have a warrant article for $104,000 for special ed? Isn't that one we do every year?
Historically,
Special ed
yes. This past year, under the advice of council and the DRA, that article was eliminated because it's not necessary. You could still follow that process, but because it's a process that allowed under state law, you don't need the warrant article for it. That was the recommendation of DRA, was to eliminate it.
All right. Any other questions on purchase services or out-of-district tuition? So you'll see that line, so if you jump down to 184, overall special ed is down 108,701. Line 187, which is special ed aides, is at 19.8 full-time equivalencies. That's directly related to IEPs and students that need assistance. So, and you'll see the retirement associated with that on line 191. Jumping to the next page, there are no significant pieces that I'd like to point out, except for you can see again the retirement just scattered through some of the positions. Page 7, no major changes, no significant increases or decreases. Same with page 8. Same with page 9, and this is just all related to regular ed programs. Same with page 10. Same with page 11. I'm missing the...
Is that line, start with line 429?
Yes.
Co-curriculum. Yep.
Page 12, it starts with line 429.
May I ask a question?
Yep.
I see a reduction of $7,500 for the trainer.
No, it's not a reduction, Phil.
Where are you looking,
Oh, I'm sorry,
Phil?
I misread it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. From the adjusted budget for 19 to 20, in 1920, you had 82. But 2021, that's this year. Okay, fine, sorry.
You good? All right, page 13. Just want to bring your attention to lines 482 and 483. So you'll see increases for baseball and softball, and that's your uniform cycle. So we are on a cycle with that piece, and we're really trying to stick to it as far as replacing the uniforms and being equitable in that piece. Same with boys lacrosse and girls lacrosse, which is 492 and 493. So those are the uniforms for those 4 teams. Any questions on that? Page 14. There are no changes except for the retirement. Page 15 is your nursing services. Remember, we contract out with Spear, so there's not much of a change with that. The reason we only spent $62,164 last year is because of COVID, and we didn't utilize the nurses from March till the end of the year, so we did get a break on that. Psychological services, this is where the school psychologist and social worker are placed, so those are those 2 positions. You'll see it's down a little bit, and we do anticipate the next person to come in a little bit lower than our current social worker. So that's just a staff exchange. Page 16, The only piece I want to bring your attention to is line 591. So we're down in speech services, about $17,419. We're also up a touch in physical therapy, which is line 594. And these are all directly related to students with IEPs. And then for occupational therapy, if you can go to line 608, we're down $7,194. That's all, these are all contracted out for folks to come in and implement the IEP. Page 17, there's no major changes except for the retirement. Page 18, you jump down to line 670, that is your contingency fund, so that's typically a warrant article that you put out there, and that's basically so we could utilize these funds. Sometimes if you don't have a dollar in them, it just gives us the flexibility to do so. So it's zero until it's voted in. No major changes on school board secretary, treasurer, election services, audit, and any legal services. So jump into page 19. Office of the Superintendent, that is up $34,969, and that is mainly due to retirement and any medical pieces, as well as the technology director. So that is all reflective in that increase. Am I missing anything on that?
No, there's a small change in the apportionment percentages, but mostly it's just the SAU budget as a whole is up about 120.
Yep. If I can bring your attention to line 704, technology coordinator. So you have two folks in that, your tech director and your tech assistant. So you had a market adjustment last year. We used to pay additional summer work. We've looped that into the current contract of the tech director. So it's a savings out of another account. So that is the increase there. No other major changes on that page. Go to page 20. No major changes except for, you'll see on line 760, there's NEASC dues. You'll see that's down because we had our NEASC visit this year, so it's just a decrease. You just have to pay for the annual.
That's it.
Yep. So that's good. Page 21. Have a couple big items in this page. If I can, let's see, let's jump down to line 795, computer licenses. This is up $32,150, and this includes all of our software. So we have broken it out in the budget before and kind of put it in one line, done a couple different things. It's all in one line now to keep track of its curriculum software, its virus protection, it's everything that we use digitally at this point. And a lot of our textbooks have shifted to online platforms. So it could be a student information system, it can be our online assessment system. It's just, we use so much at this point, that's where it all is. So you'll see a couple other lines decrease because we've lumped it all into this line. Jumping down to line 809 and 810. So these are part of the capital improvement plan that John presented, I think it was a month ago. And in that increase in line 809, replacement of equipment is your dishwasher and a floor machine. And then line 810 is replacing computer network equipment. So that was it's a huge increase of $162,905. 60% of that is reimbursable for the following year. But you have to front load the cost here. So that line, as you see, so between retirement and this portion of the budget is a significant increase.
Question.
Yeah?
If I recall correctly, you conceptually accepted the whole proposal that you set before us. So now when we see them in the budget, is there room for us to discuss these and maybe manipulate them on the remarks that you'd like to make specific to these and why?
Yeah, we can look back on anything and look at it and be flexible, I'm sure. Some of of it with the networking, no, the networking's
Networking,
tough
no.
because it's a licensing piece, but like the dishwasher's
Dishwasher.
on its last
Last
leg,
leg.
but it's just something that,
You own all the equipment downstairs in capital services, so anything that breaks, we've got to replace, so that's a major.
yeah, this is the one in the cafeteria,
Not here.
Right, so the E-rate is related to networking.
networking, yeah.
You're internet and that piece.
Any other questions on that? Next page. Care and upkeep of grounds and services. So this is your Parks and Rec line. You pay, the high school pays a portion of Parks and Rec. So 814 is your contracted personnel. It used to say salaries, but really they're not our salaries, just that we pay the contracted piece and the personnel from that. So that's up $16,699. Do you want to review that line real quick?
I can. Just a bit of history. The Park and Rec Department of the town invoices the school system, if you will, in general, for 72% of the time, wages and benefits for 4 key employees, not the director. The director is a town employee. But the grounds foreman and 3 groundskeepers, excuse me, based on a time study that was done a number of years ago, 70% of the time of those 4 employees is spent on school district grounds. So the town invoices the school district et al., if you will, and that invoice is split 65% to the Heavy Baker District and 35% to the Plymouth Elementary School District, based on the amount of space that's being maintained by these employees. I worked actually pretty closely with Lisa this year, analyzing the historical trend of those invoices, and also the supplies, the supplies were broken out as well, and that 65-35 is consistent with how it's been done for a number of years. So if there's going to be a change to that, we're happy to undertake that conversation with the town if you'd like us to, but that's just sort of maintaining, and the town has some turnover in its employees and some retirement expenses with some employees who are leaving, and that's all built into this budget.
It's a 12% increase, roughly.
Again, you said 65-35 between the high school 65% and the elementary school 35.
Yes.
And on the contracted personnel line, is it 72% of that?
No, so if you take the town's expense for these 4 employees is $100, they bill $72 to the SAU, if you will. The SAU takes that $72 and splits it 65% to Heavy Baker, 35% to the elementary school.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I have a brief question. I know that it's very small and it's pennies, but why would the town of Rumney residents want to pay Plymouth people to maintain fields? As this is a regional school district and it's coming from individual towns, I'm just kind of curious why.
It was a memorandum.
Why would Rumney residents want to pay Plymouth employees to maintain?
Are they school grounds or?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why they're.
That's okay then. I was just really kind of confused as why we're paying the town employees to fix things.
So the town employees are spending 70% of their time on school fields and 28% of their time on town field. Does that make sense?
Total sense now.
Okay.
I was just trying to figure out how to.
At least at the time of the last time study, which was honestly before my time here, but by someone, the study was conducted by someone who trusts.
Yeah. That's right. Any other questions on Parks and Rec? Phil?
Yeah. Is the ski tow liability, the ski jump liability?
Yes.
Okay.
You used to have a ski tow out there.
Yep.
but it's-
Yeah, like that.
We can have that back in. I'm just kidding. Jumping down to student transportation, you're in a contract with Durham Bus Services, so that is down $8,936. No bus purchases, and then the other piece is special ed transportation, so we're responsible for taking a student who requires individualized transportation or transportation to a day placement. that is something we are responsible for. So that is up 35,400. That's in the students' IEPs, so that is directly related to individual students. The only other piece to add on this page is line 836, co-curricular music, and that's up 13,000, and that's because there is a music trip that's cyclical, that they go to Pennsylvania.
Three years.
Every when?
3 years.
3 years. So there we go. So that's put in there every 3 years, correct?
Correct.
All right. On the next page, on line 856, also part of the capital improvement plan, is that we have a serious issue with the North Wing sewer pipes where we had a leak this year, so that is a high priority, and that is the quote for that, so it's $83,000 for that piece. Right, is there
Yes.
anything else to add?
No.
That was, that,
We did the camera search out of this year's budget, that was around 3,600, but that's what to fix it, it's gonna be 83,000. It's a major project.
if you jump down to line 877, if you look all the way to the right, health insurance is up 35,578, 7.1 GMR. And then dental is down a little bit. For a grand total, is up 522,561, about 3.8% in appropriations. So the major factors jumping into that are the sewer lines, the retirement, the networking.
Health and dishwashing, total up
That's
to
it.
554. Yeah.
So that's without any program changes. So that's just maintaining.
The building.
I'm going to jump to the revenue page and then we can have a discussion.
And before you do that, can I just
You
ask
sure.
a question? Where I find the student contracted service, the SRO?
That's
Yes, that is right.
professional
It is-
services.
It is on, it's 2,800, line 845, professional and tech services, 58,617. Student resource officer. Yep.
That's worked out extremely well, Phil. She's been a big plus to the school.
Any other questions on the appropriation side? That last page there is just a summary of all the functions and how much they're up or down. And then on the last page is your revenue page. So just a couple pieces to review. Your unreserved fund balance, which we've talked about several times, and it's public knowledge from last spring, is from COVID, is the unreserved fund balance of $629,175. So that's significantly higher than it ever has been. So that was purposeful. Catastrophic aid, so that catastrophic aid or special education aid is for a student that is placed out of district. We can recoup funds if they exceed 3.5 times your tuition. So that is what, if you're paying out of district for a substantial amount exceeds your 3.5 times the tuition, then we're supposed to get 100 back, we get about 60% back in catastrophic aid. Equitable education aid or adequacy, that is down, and that is due to both enrollment and the formula change.
Correct.
Yeah. Any questions on that? Vocational tuition, it's that same 25,000. Restricted thermal recs, 20,000. Medicaid, we can reimburse for any student who qualifies under special education who is Medicaid eligible for services such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychiatric services, testing, etc. Sometimes for AIDS as well. So about 20,000. IDEA is your federal special ed grant, 60,000. Title I is at 175,000 projected allocation, vocational at 1. Tuition, regular ed, and special ed, we do anticipate it going up to $331,381, so I don't know.
That's based on a change of enrollment tuition in students from 8.5 to, and I say half because you have a split student, from 8.5 to 11.5 students coming in. I will say that in one case, a contributing factor to your special ed costs increasing that you saw early in the budget are reimbursed. In that $331,000 is $84,000 in special ed cost reimbursements from one of the sending districts.
Question. Do you have a figure for tuition costs for regular students?
Per person?
Yes.
The cost per pupil?
Right now, it's like $19.
This year's number is $20,261, and I've estimated next year at a revenue or a cost to the sending districts of $21,500. The big change is the change in the number of projected students, and a lot of that has to do with the increase in enrollment at Laurel Valley Elementary School, and we're hearing that their 8th grade class is almost entirely coming here.
Co-curricular.
If they stay.
The expense of tuition those students here is in their elementary school budget, so
Yeah.
your revenue budget.
Yep. All right. Let's see, jumping down to tuition summer school, co-curricular is $30,000. Nothing in tuition summer school. What's that?
I don't have anything. There's no gates. I haven't charged anybody, theater or athletics.
Vocational education Perkins, so that's yearly $75,000. Title VI, $10,000. Adult basic education, $4,000. Nothing for $1 for drug-free schools and other federal state grants. Your child nutrition hot lunch program, $290,000. And then you see your total school revenue, district appropriation, and the assessment at the bottom. That is draft 1. Yes, so Dan, I was reviewing the minutes from last year, and on the revenue side, we did see that you did take action on some of the unreserved fund balance, so I just wanted to bring up that again, if you would like to do that to help with the bottom line.
So one of the, as we talked about a few minutes ago, one of the prescribed, there are a number of prescribed uses when you have a retained fund balance, which, as I said, is currently $292,000. That could be used in the current year for unanticipated emergency expenses. Another use that's prescribed is you could commit by vote of the board. You could say, okay, we're going to commit now that we're going to use this year's retained fund balance as a revenue next year to reduce the tax impact. So if you were to vote to use the retained fund balance currently on hand, and the retained fund as a unreserved fund balance next year, we could add it into this number immediately, thereby reducing the change in tax impact of the proposed budget.
Which you've done in the past.
What did we do last year? Was it 160,000?
I believe the number you voted was about $204,000.
Oh, was that much?
It might have been, is that the number?
Yeah.
I think the number was $204,000 that you voted last year. Now, with the fund balance being higher because of the COVID situation, obviously, we didn't, and you voted, but subsequent to that, you voted to retain the maximum, which was the 292. So you could vote to release that retained fund balance as a revenue for next fall, and that would happen. And then if there were fund balance this year above that, either it could be, you could have a new retained balance in addition to what you were releasing, or increase the amount for next fall.
What's the percentage we're allowed to, under state law, retain?
So the historical number was 2.5%. Well, the executive order, one of the governor's executive orders for this year made it 5% due to COVID. We don't know what, I honestly don't know yet whether that's going to be a permanent change of 5% or it's going to revert back to 2.5%.
What is 2.5% roughly?
Well, this year was the 292. That was a number that was calculated by DRA that I gave to the previous superintendent who presented to this board last spring. And that's what the vote was made for, that maximum amount allowed.
Okay. I guess my second question is, I know this is an initial draft, or the second one maybe, right, from last time, but to reduce the potential tax impact, do we know what the tax, I mean, at some point it's helpful for everybody when it goes out to see how's it break down into the individual towns, what's the tax impact, that type of thing.
So if you'd like to see what this proposed budget, core budget, would do to tax rates versus the current tax rates that were just set this fall, I have that prepared for you.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I may not have made enough copies, I apologize. I think I made 10 or 12.
We can share, we can share by the table. Thank you.
Obviously, this would be impacted by any decisions like releasing the retained fund balance, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I'll just take a moment and open up my electronic copy so I can answer questions and talk you through it. That would be helpful.
Let's see.
So the real, I think the essence of your question is in the lower right-hand corner. Those are the actual tax rates after adequacy aid for the current year, the third column from the right versus actual 2020 tax rate. And based on this core budget proposal, as it, with the revenues as it currently projected, you see the change.
I don't know how we're gonna give this to the Plymouth residents. A 22.44% school budget increase.
What's that?
He's concerned about the 22% increase for the town of Plymouth.
I mean, we just got hit with the town's tax, and
Yeah, well,
nothing seems to be going down. It just keeps skyrocketing. I just,
Can I ask
That's that number, 620.
Because it's a complicated formula.
Correct.
Obviously, it's a lot of spinning plates and moving parts. Dan, do you have what the biggest driver is for a town like Plymouth on this? Is it property values relative to other towns? Is it population of the school? We'd have to do a deep dive for every town to find out. I know it's a 3-year running average for the equalization value. But is it simple enough to pinpoint for each town what the biggest driver of it was?
I can certainly prepare something for you on that regard. It's obviously it's a combination of the assessed value, the two drivers of the assessment and ADM, student population. The assessed values haven't gone crazy this year. The town of, the assessed values haven't changed wildly this year. So it's mostly about ADM. I do have the historical information here, for example. So I'll just say one point. Let's look at the Plymouth number, for example. Plymouth's assessment, their apportionment rate is changing 11%. So the formula is shifting 11% of the more, Plymouth's picking up 11% more of the total budget than it had in the current year because of those formulaic changes. Wentworth is picking up 9.1% more of the budget due to that formulaic change between ADM and assessed value.
Because it's not the actual values, and it's not actually how many students you have or how much land value you have. It's relative to every other town.
Correct.
So that's why.
Correct. So if you look at the two factors of how much property value does one town have versus the portion of all the property values of the towns,
right?
Versus, and how many students does that town send to the school versus its portion of all the students from all the towns. It's half from each factor, right? So that's why I say, Plymouth's number is up 11%, Wentworth is a little more than 9%, Ashland is 1%, Camden 6%. That's sort of towards the middle of, the numbers I'm quoting right now are sort of towards the middle of the page. right below the big bold 15,229, there's a section that says apportionment rate equal to 80% plus equalized value divided by 2. And that's where those numbers come together, and sort of to the right, where you see the assessment increase by town. And that's before the adequacy factor, and adequacy is down by town. One of the things that's a little bit confusing is that adequacy is actually by town, not by school district. And while we're showing on this sheet that adequacy for this school district is down $53,000, overall for all the towns that are members of this district, Baker, it's down over $500,000.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest
And
drivers.
that gets split between the high school and the elementary schools, so it gets apportioned between those two portions of the tax.
Yeah, the stories in the
That's a driver as well,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a complicated formula, as you say, but it's not rocket science, you guys can understand.
But just so people who are watching online can tell, that's a figure that we're getting a lot less money from the state, is what's happening. So we're getting less adequacy for each of the individual towns from the state.
Certainly a big piece of it,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think everyone's received the analysis, everyone on this board should receive the analysis by town that you're resident of this year's tax rate versus last year's, and where the drivers of that change in the town's tax rate come from, whether it be municipal or a local school or a cooperative school.
And that's without moving any of the 629 over. That's just.
Right, so once again, one way to mitigate that impact that you're seeing in the bottom right-hand corner of that tax sheet would be potentially to commit the fund balance that you have on hand now, the retained fund balance from last year of 292 into a revenue for next year.
Right. But that amount, and it's apportioned through the formula, so it's going to be reflected per the formula for each town.
No, it's just going to come off the bottom of the district budget, before the district budget. Before the net district budget after revenues is apportioned out.
Okay.
So maybe, we may be saying the same thing two different ways.
Would you do that number again, 292?
The retained fund balance from last year that could be voted to as a revenue for next year?
292.72.
292,724.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we should return it all. Pretty much.
You down to 600 and some odd thousand?
No, the 290.
I thought we had 5% this year.
Well, the 600 was already returned.
Okay.
So, and that's the important point. The 629,000, that was the unretained fund balance. The 292 is what's called a retained fund balance. The 629,000 that's on your revenue sheet for this year was a revenue which deflated or depressed or lowered this year's tax burden.
Right.
And that's one of the things you're grappling with here, is it sort of is a double whammy, if you will, of why the tax, even without a large, it makes the increase to the expense budget seem larger. As a more dramatic hit to the tax rate.
And you don't have it next year.
Right, because you push down tax rates this year like that.
We talked about that when we came up with that number. We kept saying, we're gonna tell the public, this is coming, this is coming. Here it is.
Well, the town didn't do anything with giving money back, and that rate went up by over 9%.
Right.
I think we have to do something, I don't know. I mean, everybody's living in the COVID world. There's people in this town not working right now, trying to live on, whatever, unemployment, and that's gone by the wayside. It's a tough time.
Question?
Barbara? Go ahead, Barbara.
The unreserved fund balance, we've gone through some changes in recent years, and what are the requirements? If we take the max, do we have to use that all by a certain date, or can we take part of the figure and then part again, or is it a one-shot deal?
Are we speaking about last year's unretained fund balance?
No, well, we can talk about last year's, at the point in time that we decide what we want to do with an unreserved fund balance, do we have to decide one time how much we want to take?
Yeah, so
Or can we do it a couple of times, up to times?
I would suggest that with regards to the retained fund balance of $292,000, you could vote to commit that to release it into a revenue to reduce taxes next year. And then, as we approach the spring, and as we work through the spring, this coming spring, March, April, May, June, and we see what additional funds remain, you could decide if there are some unanticipated expenses you want to grapple with, or commit additional funds. You could retain, you could once again retain a portion, and that which you didn't retain would add to that 292 with an additional unretained fund balance.
So you talking about encumbering expenses for next year?
I guess that's my question. If we agree on a figure or percentages, and as we progress through the year, if we haven't used it all, can we carry that unreserved fund balance that's not used the next year?
So every year, if you're going to retain any portion of your fund balance that exists on June 30th, that has to be authorized and voted on every year at the end of the fiscal year.
But it doesn't stop us from taking the maximum amount for the next year.
Correct.
Or even last year. But that money is not used, doesn't it automatically go into the balance that gets turned back?
Correct.
In other words, you can't bank it and stockpile it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's my question.
yeah.
I don't have a number in my head, but I have a motion I want to make, and I guess I could say we could just give it all back and go from there. So I make a motion to give it back and,
The maximum that you can give back,
yeah,
which is what? Dan?
and help the folks that are there today.
Well,
I know we're rolling the dice. If a special ed student.
I don't think it's a giving back, I think it's counting as a revenue.
Right.
so Madam Chair, you're speaking to the motion before seconded?
What, do I need to say something?
It's getting tricky.
It is getting tricky.
So typically, I would recommend you take a second to the motion for purposes of discussion,
And then we discuss.
and then we can discuss it.
Okay,
Second motion.
yes,
So the motion is second, so if you don't mind, I'll just jump in.
yes.
So if that motion were to pass, what I would do, without other alternative guidance, would be to take the retained fund balance from last year of 292,724 and add it onto your revenue sheet, and all documents and shared public documents moving forward in this budget cycle would have that committed $292,000 in revenue and the resulting tax impact. That being said, as we approach the spring and we have this type of conversation again, as I think is typical for you, in March, April, May, you have conversations about what does the year-to-date budget look like from revenues and expenses, and where are we? And then I can provide you a more clarity about what the year end is shaping up to be, and you can decide, you know what? Let's say we have another $500,000 from this year's expenses, right? That 229 is last year's money that was saved, 292, excuse me. You can say, all right, we have another $500,000. Do we want to give it all back and make the fund balance for next fall 792, or do we want to retain a portion of it for unanticipated expenses and give back half of it, or whatever? We can have that conversation. You can commit the 292 today, put it on the sheets and all the tax projections, and then we revisit the conversation in the spring when we see what this year's shaping up to be like. And that's what I would suggest would be the clearest course of action.
So it's flexible, it can, we're committing that amount that you.
You're committing last year's leftover
Right.
to next year's tax
Right,
bill.
but we can always add to it if we
Absolutely.
want.
Based on
depending
how this year shapes
situation.
up.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
go ahead, Phil.
Tim, I agree with what you wanted. I've heard from people, a business person as recently as yesterday, saying they aren't going to be able to pay the first tax bill. I just don't have enough money.
Right.
So I agree with you. But I think is that we haven't really finalized a budget as far as the appropriation, I see them as two different things, although it certainly impacts the tax rate, which is what I'm hearing is a problem for many people. But is it premature to make that motion tonight as opposed to waiting until we finalize the budget?
When I looked at your records from last year, you did it during the draft budget, during this session. So as it was presented, you made a motion, you took action on this piece. So that's why I brought it up tonight, because you made that, and then we can make any further adjustments in the appropriations if you give us a certain percentage you're looking at on the appropriation side. We can go back and deal with that piece separately, but you did take action on this in one of the first drafts.
So that's my thought process too, Phil. I mean, we could come back on draft 4 and say, hey, we've made some changes and now we're going to back that back down or to 200,000. So, but I think for purposes of looking at the final finality of what we're looking at, and we're pretty close. I mean, we're not going to change very much. I don't see very many changes. We're not cutting any teachers. We're not going to.
You don't have any salaries in this budget.
I thought all the salaries were in. Well,
You don't have the
The increase.
negotiations and for
Warrant.
support staff and teachers.
But they're warrant articles.
Yeah, those are warrant articles, so they wouldn't be in here.
But to be, if I could,
Yeah.
to be clear, any additional warrant articles with money, like collective bargaining agreements or anything else, would be added to this number.
Correct.
right. It's not going down.
Right.
Right, that
That's one.
compounds your issue. And I agree with that.
To answer your question, if I may, I don't think there's anything premature about that motion.
Okay.
Once again, it can be revisited, or it might give you additional clarity into the net number that you're contemplating on the appropriation side.
And what happens if we do run into a couple families move in and have significantly involved special needs kids, and we voted to use that 292, then we don't have that reserve fund to draw on for this year, do we?
Well, you'd still have everything in this year's appropriation.
Yeah, we have.
And I think you could, the interesting thing about you committing a retained fund balance is that if it's not there at the end of the year because you had other emergency expenses, it's just not there. And it would change the amount that you raise because the revenue wouldn't be there. Every year, we have projected revenues, this last year's projected revenues. These aren't what's used to set the tax rate. September 1, we filed a form with the called MS-24 with the DRA that updates these numbers, and that's what sets the tax rate. So we may have to, for example, we're projecting $331,000 in tuition. Next fall, we may say, you know what? Those kids from this town, the tuition's in, they all moved out of the country. And so we're not going to have $330,000 in tuition. We're going to have some other number, and that's going to impact the tax rate. So that's why it's the projected versus the actual conversation.
Did I understand correctly that if a family moves in or two families move in, average out-of-district placement probably is around $70,000 now?
It's over 100.
Is it okay? We will have to find that money in this year's budget if a family moves in. Or if we do it for next year, we have to find it in that budget if we have expended and given back. So,
We do that every year.
yeah. I'm just leery of not having any cushion for special needs students moving in.
We've done that in the past.
But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I agree, but
We're pretty confident in this year's numbers for the
Very.
special ed. And we're already at December, so it will be prorated anyways. We want to,
Yeah, I just have another.
Oh, sorry,
question.
Maureen.
Do you see any other repercussions that we're missing if we were to do this? I mean, what's another possible impact that?
I think it's a pretty common practice that you have done in the past. So it's something,
Have we given that all of it?
On occasion, we have,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Years past.
it's not, so to be clear, it's not something that's been around for 100 years,
Right.
right? It's only been in place for probably 5 years. And the years, it's been voted to commit a portion of it, definitely last year, possibly the year before. And in last year, and possibly each of the 2 years it was voted on, the unreserved fund balance that the year wound up with exceeded the number that was voted, so it became a moot point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to support this, I'm going to vote for it when it comes to the vote, but I just want to say, so, what we're doing right now, because of the 629 and then this, are we going to yo-yo now? Is that what's going to happen for the next few years, in terms of up, down, up, down? I'm just trying to
I
picture.
think it's the opposite, actually. I think because the 629 is already done and gone,
Okay.
this mitigates the 629. So instead of going 629, 0, you're sort of going 629, at least 292.
Okay, well then I
So
think
you're
that's,
sort of ramping back up instead of going like this, and then possibly like that.
yeah, well, I think that's preferable anyway, because you try and iron out the highs and the lows and make it more gradual. I think that's more consistency for the citizens and the taxpayers.
Yeah, we've tried to do that consistently every year, so.
Discussion? Make a motion?
So we're all set, so we're just going to say all those in favor.
All those in favor? Opposed? And abstain.
Good job on the budget, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tough time.
It is. Is there anything, is there enough, so we're at, I just want to go back to the 3.8, just because we're going to have, the next meeting in 2 weeks is going to be a full board meeting to hopefully approve the budget that we bring to the hearing, which is in January. Is there anything you'd like us to look at on the appropriation side? You're at about 3.8% on the in increases, so do you want us to look at a certain number, a certain percentage, I don't know, or do you want us to leave it? It's just,
I always thought our goal was 3% or less. But in today's world, I don't know, that 0.8 is not, I mean, we're within the range for me, I guess.
Okay.
With COVID and everything that's just going on right now.
We gotta remember, there's gonna be, in all likelihood, add-ons to that 3.8. Could we end up, what does it take to raise 1%?
Sorry, yes.
what does it take to raise 1%?
Looking for a number to raise for 3.8 once the warrant articles get in with the support staff.
How much money would be needed to bring it up to 4.8, let's say? And
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is, what would it cost a single warrant article that would add 1% increase to the budget?
Yeah.
About $150,000.
okay, 150.
Yeah.
Very good there.
Then, I mean, that's the bottom line, and that's what the community is gonna care about. Not necessarily care how we got there.
Right.
But they're looking at an increase of 5+%.
Yeah, but Dan, I'm sorry. But Dan, haven't we always focused on this number being at 3% and the warrant articles carry themselves? I think that's pretty much how we've handled it.
Yes, I'm going to plead a certain amount of ignorance to the conversations that were happening at this cycle, portion of the cycle.
Yeah.
But based on the documents that I have access to, I think that's a correct statement, because the historical document that's always been passed around, this document, was always, at this stage of the cycle, was a core budget.
That's how we did business.
And afterwards, it was the actual all articles.
Yeah.
So we're looking, if we want to address that 0.8%, we're probably looking at $86,000 or something they'll have to cut from this budget to get to 3% or roughly.
125, 140, something like that, yeah.
So Kyla and Bruce, do you think that's doable?
It's doable. It would affect programming. That number like that, you look at personnel. It's not supply, there's not really, if you look at the uniforms, 5,000, that wouldn't do anything, or if it's, but we can get there for you. It will affect, it would affect.
It will be personnel. Yeah, we can get it.
Well, if we go and show a 3% increase, and the warrant articles are the warrant articles, if they pass them, they pass them, if they don't, they don't.
So you're saying you want to have them
I'd
try
like
to
to
get
be
down
on
to
the
3%? Why don't you see what you can do, I guess?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I
Yep.
think in the past, what we've done is, if I recall, this might have been years ago actually, is just scenarios. So if you had to get to 3.5%, what would that look at?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a list
If you had to
of.
get to 3%, what would that look at? And then that would give people, say, no, we don't want to cut that, we don't want to do that. What's always been helpful for me, and this is why I bring it up sometimes, is what's really in our control versus not really in our control. I mean, sure, you can cut positions and you can cut things and do that if you want to cut into programs, which most people aren't want to do if, you have the numbers to justify the faculty and the staff. But what's helpful, I think, is how much of the budget is attributable to the fact that the state pushed back another 4% of the retirement, right? That was a significant figure. What's the, and then they did that.
200,000.
They did that, right? How much is attributable to the fact that the inadequacy isn't as much? And so the
Insurance went up.
Insurance went up. All those types of things, because I look through this budget and I say, this is a pretty tight budget. I mean, we see a lot of zeros in here for the differences for everything, right? It's not like you're seeing huge numbers of fat you can cut away unless you're willing to make some real difficult choices that you might not have to make. So I think it might be helpful to say, what would it look like if it was 3.5? What would it look like if it's 3? That
We can come back with that for you.
Yeah, and it would be helpful to see with this fund balance that we have just voted on, what that would look like and how that's going to change.
Yeah, well, I know, we can add that right into the revenue side.
That should add.
That's going to mitigate your tax side, but it's not going to change your appropriation increase, Rich.
Right. So on the appropriations side, we'll come back with a few ideas for a possible 3.5% and a 3%. As close as we can get to that piece and give you a few suggestions. That sound good?
That sounds good.
All right, very good.
Did you reform vote on that?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Okay, so.
This year's not getting any easier, I'll tell you.
Full board meeting, Kyla already mentioned this, but full board meeting on the 15th.
Yep,
No,
and it will be a full board meeting.
Other business? Okay. Board member concerns? Okay. Privilege of the, oh, no one's here. Do I have to say that out loud? Privilege of the floor? And so then we vote to go into non-public session?
So I'd like to make a motion to go into non-public for the purpose of personnel.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Uh,